So that really doesn't look good for the future in terms of peace and harmony. I think there's going to be a lot of, certainly a lot more litigation, a lot more confrontation, conflict on the land. We're going to go back to that. We have no choice. If we cannot rely on the courts and we cannot rely on these processes, like the environmental assessment processes, we have no choice but to defend the land. That's what we're obligated to do as Indigenous peoples. It's a sacred connection that we have with the land. And there wasn't any presentation that didn't make mention of that. And the Sokotan people said, we can't allow this to happen. We won't allow it to happen. So I'm very fearful of what the future will bring. And if it's not this particular project, it'll be a project somewhere else. And that's the kind of future we're moving into. On the positive side, I lose track of my time. I think it was last weekend, we hooked up with Alexander Morton in Sydney, and we walked to Victoria, and that is a long, long ways uphill. But it was such a powerful experience. There were so many seniors involved in that, and I'm talking seniors. I'm not talking older people. It was amazing that there were people that were in their 80s that were struggling alongside of the highway. Because they know and understand that the future of wild salmon are at stake with respect to the fish farms. And they were offered rides and whatnot, and they just shake their head. And we heard that there was an elderly gentleman that actually collapsed, and they couldn't, he couldn't continue. But the lawn in front of the legislature was just a sea of people. And I've been on the front of the legislature on many occasions. We had a Title and Rights Alliance rally in 2004. We had over 3,000 people. This crowd was twice, if not 3 times as big as our rally that we had in 2004. Vicki Husband said it was the largest environmental rally in the history of the province of British Columbia, and I believe that. And it was so beautiful because it was Indigenous people, non-Indigenous people, it was everyone. It was people involved in tourism, commercial fishermen, you name it, they were there. And then the press comes along and suggests there was 1,000 people there. I mean, that's so infuriating after the suffering that went on in that march, not to mention the fact that Alexandra came from Soyantula, on the northern end of Vancouver Island, and walked all the way. And there were young children that walked all the way. So it was very, very powerful. And in terms of reconciliation, I think that our only hope is that we're able to go back to that place that we were a very long time ago. And I started out by talking about the 70s, the 60s, the 70s, when we were united, where there were social justice movements, where there was the anti-nuclear movement, the peace movement, and all of those other kinds of movements. And every weekend we were out, marching off someplace and whatnot, and we had our children with us. There were so many children involved in this march. It was just something. It was beautiful, it was powerful, it was inspiring, and I think that's what we're going to have to get back to. And in that regard, I think that somehow we have to rise above our differences.
Yes.
You know, we have to throw away our labels, and we have to be people again.
Yes.
And that's not easy, because we have people in all of our camps that are really deeply entrenched in ideology, that will argue until 4 o'clock in the morning about the rightness or the wrongness of a decision, the correctness and whatnot. Meanwhile, the boardrooms that are in the US and offshore and, you know, on Howe Street, Bay Street, Wall Street, you know, they're not arguing, you know, they're just going in there to, you know, to continue to destroy the land and whatnot. And it was really tragic to see that those divisions take place in Williams Lake, because there were good people from Williams Lake that were actually crying about, you know, losing their mortgage and things like that. And, you know, I understand that. We live in poverty and whatnot. So, what I said, Joan and I spoke together in front of the legislature. We were on the speakers list. And what I said at Williams Lake is our children deserve better. You know, they deserve better than you know, what we're offering. And I think that what happened in Victoria, you know, should serve as an example of what we need to do. And it was one lady who has been relentless in her defense of wild salmon. So, and clearly it's not an Indigenous issue. You know, it's an issue that affects everybody. So, I just want to close off by saying that what I said earlier is, when you become a grandparent, and it puts you in a different world, and it helps you to get off your high horse, because, you know, there's nothing more precious than your grandchildren, and you truly start to think about their future. And so you have to dismount, you know, and you got to walk with the people, and that's what we have to do. And that's what I intend to do, you know, regardless of whether I'm the president or the chair, or as long as I keep holding the position of Joan's husband, he's already being Kappa, or Grandpa. You know, I think I will spend the rest of my life doing this kind of work.